The void of space is silent. But silence does not mean peace. In the darkness between the stars, something moves. Something ancient, something powerful. And it is watching. Deep in the Kelrith expanse, an isolated sector of the galaxy known for its treacherous subspace anomalies and pirate-infested asteroid belts, an armada of sleek, bioorganic vessels drifts in formation. They are not the hunters today. They are the hunted. The Zyphera Dominion, an empire of highly advanced, multi-limbed entities with neural-linked starships, had believed themselves untouchable. Their biomechanical warships, capable of bending light around their hulls to vanish from sensors, had secured their dominion for centuries. No enemy had dared to challenge them directly. Until now. A sudden, piercing chime shatters the stillness of their command nexus. Red glyphs flicker to life across the curved walls of the flagship, Vasharithul, a behemoth that pulses with a strange, organic glow. An emergency alert scrolls across the neural interface. Warning: unidentified hostile vessel approaching, human origin, highly armed, engagement likely. The Zyphera do not panic. They are war-born, bred for conflict, their minds sharp and cold. But even they cannot ignore the absurdity of the warning. A human vessel, here, alone? Impossible. For decades, humanity had been dismissed as an anomaly, a primitive species that had, against all logic, begun expanding beyond their home system. They had been categorized as an emerging race, technologically inferior, lacking in interstellar unity. The Dominion had encountered human outposts before, but they had never seen a single warship breach their sovereign territory. Yet there it was, on their scanners, heading straight for them. The tactical analysis node pulses with raw data, transmitting information directly into the command neural link. Vessel designation, unknown. Class, battleship. Hull integrity, 98% armaments, extensive threat. Level, extreme. The Dominion High Commander, Zalvaran, looms over the projections, his bioluminescent tendrils twitching. His kind do not feel fear the way humans do. They do not shudder. They do not sweat. But something primal slithers through his mind, an unease he has never known before. The human ship does not respond to hails. It does not broadcast an identity. It does not slow down. It moves with purpose. As it pierces the event horizon of the sector's most volatile nebula, the Dominion ships begin to shift into formation. War protocols activate, shields hum to life, plasma lances coil with blue energy. The Zyphera prepare for battle, convinced that whatever reckless species piloted this craft was about to be eradicated. But something is wrong. The ship does not scan like anything recorded before. It warps gravity around its hull in ways that defy known physics. It absorbs radiation instead of reflecting it. Its energy signature is unlike anything in the Zyphera database, a cold, abyssal void that seems to drink in surrounding light. Then, the first transmission comes through. Not in words, not in any recognizable frequency. A single, oscillating pulse. And as the pulse echoes through their neural interfaces, something horrifying happens. The Zyphera warships, without warning, begin shutting down. Their shields flicker out. Their weapons go dark. Their engines fail. Panic sweeps through the fleet like wildfire. This should be impossible. The Dominion's technology is among the most advanced in the known galaxy. Their ships are bioengineered with self-regenerating neural cores. They do not simply shut down. Yet, ship by ship, the Zyphera vessels are falling silent, and the human ship, it just keeps coming. Cold. Unstoppable. Silent. The realization slams into the Dominion fleet like a gravitational shockwave. This is no ordinary warship. This is something else entirely, and they have no idea how to stop it. Zalvaran's tendrils, spasmed involuntarily, a reaction embedded deep in his species' genetic memory, an instinct from an era when they were prey, not predators. He forcibly suppressed it. This was absurd. The Zyphera Dominion had conquered countless star systems. Their biomechanical fleet had annihilated entire civilizations before they could even mount a resistance. And yet, here they were, powerless, their ships dying one by one, and the enemy hadn't fired a single shot. His command node pulsed with chaotic data streams. The Dominion fleet, once a seamless web of interconnected intelligence, was unraveling. Subspace comms were failing. Biocircuitry, the living nervous system of each warship, was withering, as if some invisible force was draining them of life. And still, the human warship approached. Zalvaran's secondary eyes flicked toward the last functioning data feed. The readings made no sense. The ship was not broadcasting a standard distress beacon, a challenge, or even an encrypted military signature. It was emitting a void, a frequency so perfectly nullified that sensors detected it as an absence, an artificial darkness in the fabric of reality. Then, the second pulse came, a deep, resonant frequency that bypassed all known communication channels. The Zyphira felt it directly in their neural interfaces, a deep vibration, like a distant scream traveling through an ocean of dead stars, and with it a message. Not words, not symbols, something primal, something vast. You are not ready. Zalvaran felt the transmission burrow into his mind like a living thing. It was not a warning, it was a statement of fact. He fought against the rising sensation of dread. He would not allow this. He was a high commander of the Dominion. He had seen entire worlds turn to ash at his command. No human vessel, no single ship, could defy the will of the Zyphira. Summoning the last reserves of neural power, he reached out to the remaining active warships in the fleet. There was only one course of action left. If their technology was failing, if their systems were compromised, if conventional warfare was impossible, then there was only one thing left to do: ram the human warship. The command was transmitted instantly, and the few remaining functional Zyphira warships responded in kind. Their organic hulls rippled, shifting their internal structures for maximum acceleration. These ships were not merely machines, they were living extensions of their pilots, and if they could not fight, they would consume. The first attack vessel launched forward at breakneck speed, its spike-like prow igniting with molten plasma. It would strike the human ship head-on, detonate its core, and obliterate everything. Within a 100-kilometer radius, even if it meant sacrificing half the fleet, the Dominion would not fall to a single ship. Zalvaran braced himself, neural link surging with the final moments of his warriors. The battle was not lost yet. Victory would be written in destruction. And then, it happened. As the first Zyphira warship closed the final kilometers, accelerating beyond maximum capacity, it vanished. Not destroyed, not disintegrated, just gone. No explosion. No wreckage. Just the sudden, terrifying absence of a warship that had existed mere moments ago. And then the second warship followed. And the third. One by one, the Zyphira vessels charging toward the human warship blinked out of existence. Zalvaran felt his neural link go cold. A vast silence spread through the command nexus. His remaining fleet was gone, and the human ship was still there. Unscathed. Waiting. Zalvaran had never known fear. Not truly. The Zyphira were bred to dominate, their minds engineered for efficiency, strategy, and war. But now, staring at the impossible, he felt something stir in his mind, something that should not exist in a Dominion warlord. A whisper. A realization. We were wrong about them. The last remaining systems on the flagship began to die. The control panels darkened. The bioorganic structure withered. Even Zalvaran's own neural connection began to unravel, as if reality itself was rejecting him. The human warship wasn't attacking, it was erasing them. As his consciousness began to flicker, as the darkness closed in around him, Zalvaran saw one final thing. A new transmission. One final message. Do not return. Then, everything went black. Darkness. For the first time in his existence, Zalvaran knew what it meant to be truly alone. His neural link, gone. His fleet, erased. His body, adrift. The Dominion High Commander had never experienced separation from the vast intelligence network that connected his kind. The Zyphira did not function as individuals. They were a singular entity, an empire, of linked minds acting as one. To be severed was unthinkable. Yet, here he was, floating, dying. And something was watching. The human ship, silent and unshaken, still hovered in the abyss before him. Its blackened hull seemed to consume light itself, as if it were a tear in reality rather than a vessel. It was unnatural. No, beyond unnatural. The human warship was not following the laws of physics. It had not fired weapons. It had not evaded attacks. It had simply existed, and in doing so, it had erased his entire fleet. What kind of weapon was this? What kind of entity could wield such control? Zalvaran's remaining senses flickered with desperate calculations. Was he the only one left? His neural core was failing, but something still functioned. A dying ember of his bio-interface allowed him to scan the void around him, searching for anything, any trace of his fleet. There was nothing. No debris, no wreckage, no energy signatures. It was as if his ships had never been there at all. He refused to believe. The Dominion did not simply cease to exist. And yet, here he was, alone. No, not alone. A ripple passed through the emptiness, a disturbance in the nothingness that surrounded him. Something moved. Not the human ship. Something else. Then, without warning, a voice. Not through his neural interface. Not through sound waves or subspace transmissions. A voice directly inside his mind. It spoke in words that should have been foreign, but they weren't. They were clear. Terrifyingly clear. We see you. Zalvaran's tendrils curled inward, his instincts screaming to resist, to fight, but there was nothing to fight. The human ship remained motionless, but something beyond it was shifting. A distortion, a fracture in space itself. At first it was barely perceptible, an unnatural ripple, as if reality itself were bending inward. Then the darkness twisted, and out of it, something emerged. A shape. No, many shapes. They did not reflect light. They did not pulse with energy. They simply existed, like ghosts in the abyss. And suddenly, Zalvaran understood. The human warship was not alone. It was never alone. This was merely the first step. His mind reeled. Had they known? Had humanity always known about this? Had they discovered something the rest of the galaxy was too blind, too arrogant to perceive? Had they made contact? He wanted to scream a warning to the Dominion, to anyone, but there was no one left to hear him. The human warship, silent and watching, had never been the real threat. This was something else. Something bigger. Something worse. Zalvaran, High Commander of the Zyphera Dominion, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, finally understood. This was not war. This was a reckoning, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. Zalvaran's consciousness flickered. His biosuit struggled to sustain his failing form, its living tendrils desperately clinging. To his fading neural signals, he felt diminished, as if he were no longer truly himself. But something far worse gripped his mind. The entities had fully emerged from the rift beyond the human warship. They were not ships, not in any way that could be classified by Dominion intelligence. No hulls, no energy cores, no propulsion signatures. They were shadows in space, manifestations of something ancient. At first, they appeared as void-born phantoms, their edges shifting like liquid darkness. But as Zalvaran focused, the truth became unbearable. These things were not just present in this dimension. They were overlapping, phasing in and out of visible reality, slipping between realms. His mind buckled at the revelation. The Dominion had always assumed the physical universe was absolute. That space, time, and energy were the only constants. But this was something outside that understanding. Something older than the stars. And humanity had found it. No, humanity had allied with it. Zalvaran's remaining neural pathways burned with a singular terrifying thought. We never should have come here. The Zyphera had sent entire invasion fleets to Earth in the past, only to be repelled with increasingly advanced weaponry. But now, he saw the truth. Humanity hadn't just advanced, They had transcended. The human warship had never been a vessel. It was a harbinger, a beacon, a lure. The moment the Dominion fleet had locked onto it, they had already lost. Zalvaran's failing sensors barely registered movement as the shadows began to shift. They weren't attacking. They didn't need to. They were assessing him, examining his mind, dissecting his thoughts, his victories, his conquests, his unquestioned loyalty to the Dominion. And then, for the first time, he heard them. Not words, not a voice, but understanding, a presence, vast, unfathomable, and disappointed. You are unworthy. Zalvaran thrashed against the force that surrounded him, but there was nothing to fight. The judgment had already been passed. He felt his mind fracturing, unraveling like strands of silk in a storm. Memories dissolved, identity blurred. He was losing himself to the abyss. No, he was a commander of the Dominion. He would not be erased like the others. With a final desperate act, he reached into his last functioning neural core, bypassing protocol, overriding his failing systems, and then a pulse, a transmission, a warning. His last act before oblivion, a final distress signal, broadcasted across subspace, a single desperate message to the Dominion homeworld. But he would never know if they received it, because Zalvaran no longer existed. His mind was gone. His body was dust, and the human warship remained, silent and waiting. The shadows retreated, into the void once more. Their task was complete, but the message they had left behind, the terrible truth, was only just beginning to spread. The Dominion High. Command received Zalvaran's final transmission 4 seconds before it was too late. A single fractured warning burned across the subspace channels, distorted and barely coherent. Do not respond. Do not approach. The void sees. And then silence. The transmission carried no location data, no fleet signatures, only terror. The Zyphira Dominion, rulers of countless systems, destroyers of civilizations, had never heard one of their own plead before. Not like this. Not in fear. For days, their analysts attempted to reconstruct the missing data. What had destroyed the fleet? What had silenced a high commander? The war councils convened. Strategies were formed. A reconnaissance fleet, small, swift, expendable, was dispatched toward the last known coordinates of Zalvaran's forces. They never arrived. Instead, something else did. At the edge of Dominion space, in the cold abyss where only patrol drones wandered, a rift appeared. It did not distort space with the violent rupture of a wormhole. It did not send shockwaves rippling through the void. It simply opened, a perfect, featureless tear in reality. And through it, they came. Not ships, not soldiers, not anything the Dominion had words for. The Dominion's greatest weapons, planetary defense grids, neutron lances, entire fleets poised for war, did not fire, because there was nothing to target. The entities did not register on scanners. They did not reflect light nor emit signals. They simply existed, and then, one by one, entire planets ceased to exist. Not destroyed. Not conquered, erased. The Dominion had always believed in the supremacy of war, the iron rule of force, the unshakable truth that no enemy, no species, no civilization could match their might. They had never considered the possibility that they were irrelevant. And humanity? The ones they had mocked for centuries, seen as weak, scattered, incapable of true dominance? They had become something else. They had seen into the void, and worse, they had made a deal. A transmission reached the Dominion homeworld days later, hijacking their primary network. A voice, deep and human, spoke through the silence. You should have left us alone. Then, all across Dominion space, the stars began to go dark. By one. By one. And somewhere, far beyond the reach of any empire, a single warship drifted in the void, waiting, watching, and smiling.